Hey everyone, welcome to the Craft Beer Professionals 2025 Spring Virtual Conference. Small Batch Standard is pumped to be the day one sponsor, and we're even more excited to help you generate more profit. Right now, today, it has never been harder to generate profit in the craft brewing industry. And here's why. If these two graphs don't paint a clear picture of what's happening in craft today, I don't know what will. In order to help you navigate this, we have put something together just for you. We call it the Small Batch Standard Profit Plays. These are excerpts from our profit playbook and include our top strategies for boosting profit at your brewery. And because you're here today, you get those plays for free. So head over to sbstandard.com/CBP to claim your copy. Thanks for being here and enjoy the talk.
All right, good. I guess it's good afternoon, everybody. Dirk Loeffler here, SEKA Chemicals. Thanks, Andrew, for having me here today. And I want to try to talk a little bit about a head scratcher that I have after being almost 40 years in the industry, saying that's just not clean. So let's get started. Again, over the past 40 years, I keep walking into breweries and the equipment is not clean. And every time I scratch my head and saying, you know, why is this? Why after all these years and, you know, the maturation of the industry, we're still having so many incidents where people just don't have clean equipment. And, you know, some things that people take for granted. You open up the brew kettle lid and it looks like this. You know, you look into a tank and it looks like this. You know, you look into a tank, it looks like this. Clearly, you see the biofilm everywhere there. You know, how come that even large breweries, we're talking, you know, several 100,000 barrels output a year, don't recognize that some of the equipment is not clean? Well, did some thinking, and I think I figured out why this is. You know, should be easy, right? Well, no, I thought about it's really only easy if you know what you're looking for. So I want to get a little bit into this one. So today we have all these like wonderful tools that theoretically, you know, should make it really easy for us to determine if something is clean or not. ATP testing, you know, keep in mind this only works with organic matter. All of us who paid attention in biology, you know that ATP is produced by living cells. Blacklight testing is an easy one. We can do swabs and do microbial testing, you know, put it in the lab and see what happens. Water break testing is an easy one, you know, not always very decisively, but, you know, visual inspection. I mean, you look in the tank and you think, is it clean? Is it not clean? But somehow with all of these, we're still not getting there. And it should be easy, right? But the reality is it's not. And let's figure out a little bit why. It's really only easy if you know what you're looking for. So what does that even mean? So let's take an example here. So these are all pictures I took in breweries. That is the real thing. This is actually this brewery operated like this for many, many years. This is a tank top assembly, and when we took it off, it looked like this. And you're just scratching your head and saying, you know, how can they not catch this? Well, you know, this is how the tank top assembly was installed on the tank. So the brewery kind of relied it's going to get cleaned, right? Well, I mean, this is the CIP spray ball coming down here, and this is the tank top assembly. You think that this spray ball is going to clean this? I don't think so. But again, you know, you have to think about this to really notice, you know, hey, yeah, this is not going to work. So theoretically, they had to climb up here every single time, disconnect this fitting, clean it by hand, and then reinstall it. Problem is, this is a 270 barrel tank. This is actually 30 feet up in the air. So it's not really easy to do. Okay, another example. This is a brewery here in Atlanta that bought some used tanks from a large brewery in the Pacific Northwest, installed them in Atlanta, used them for a relatively long time, and then they started to run out of capacity, so they started to top fill in their tanks, and suddenly they had micro problems. And you know, they called me eventually and said, Dirk, can you come out here and take a look at this? So can I look at everything and say, okay, what's this up here? So again, this is the CIP spray ball, but the CIP spray line also goes down here and cleans the tank top assembly. Well, what happened is that this check valve was actually reversed. So water could never get in there. And in fact, the pressure from the tank could escape into the CIP system, which was fortunately capped off on the bottom here. But they relied on the fact that these tanks came properly assembled when in fact they were not. So it is sometimes simple things like these that you just overlook and you wonder, okay, how could I have missed this? How can we miss this? It's like, well, sometimes we cannot see things because the surfaces with contamination are right next to surfaces that are actually clean. And we can only see the clean part when we do a quick visual inspection, and we don't really break the whole brewery apart on a regular basis to do things. But what I really came to the conclusion is that almost every time I come into a brewery and there are problems with the cleanliness of the equipment in the sanitary conditions, it is because the basic principles of cleaning were not really completely understood. Best efforts were made, but nobody really was there to tell them, what they needed to do and how they needed to do. And, not everybody, is a physicist and knows about fluid mechanics and, laminar and turbulent flow, etc. Well, turns out if you're in a brewery, you kind of need to make yourself familiar with these things. So let's take a look at this. How did they miss it? First of all, one thing that I'm always complaining about in the industry, and that's why I'm always thankful for people like Andrew to put these things on, is that he allows these presentations to be on here, and he does promote sanitation and cleaning. Many of the other organizations just don't do that. The MBAA does it a little bit. The BA has pretty much done away with that completely. The guilds are not really focusing on that. So where do you get the information from? There's a lot of misinformation on the internet. The Facebook and the Brewers Forum, sorry, Andrew, are not expert advice. Oftentimes you get even worse advice from people who know even less than you or doing it completely wrong. Unfortunately, most chemical suppliers don't even provide the expert advice either. Their people are salesmen. They are being told use this here and use this there. They're not engineers. They don't know fluid mechanics. They don't know what soils are in there. They call on a bunch of different industries. It's not their knowledge base. So we're not even talking about non-alcoholic or low-alcoholic beers here. We're talking about regular beer that doesn't even promote pathogens. So what's the key to success here? Well, the key to success is actually really simple, and it lies within this very simple circle. It is either called the sinner's circle, or I actually personally call it the synergistic circle, because I like to think that all these four factors work in synergy together. These are the operational parameters when we do cleaning. There's equipment parameters, system parameters, but these operational parameters is what we play with on a daily basis when we're trying to get equipment clean. Chemicals, mechanical, action, temperature, and time. And to some degree, these are interchangeable, but within limits. So the problem is that each operational parameter applied incorrectly can and will result in problems with cleaning. So it is important that we are kind of familiar with all these four factors and have somebody who guides us a little bit how they should be applied. Well, let's take some field examples. So these are both pictures from hot liquor tanks. Well, this used to be stainless steel. This still is stainless steel, but this is what years of neglect, not passivating, not cleaning, lots of chlorides in the water, potentially iron in the water will do to your hot liquor tank if you don't pay attention to it. This one here didn't even have a CIP spray ball. This one here was a brewery in the northeast here. They found out they have a problem with the hot liquor tank because suddenly it sprung a leak at one of the wells here. Well, turns out we had problems with chlorides, but again, they never really paid attention to these. Scaling in your hot liquor tank, plain old water chemistry. If you have hot water, as you increase alkalinity and or temperature, the hard water constituents are less soluble, they precipitate out and cause scaling in your tank. The problem is that if you also have chlorides and hot water in there, which you do in a hot liquor tank, the scaling can actually promote chloride pitting and chloride stress corrosion when the scale is present. So this is actually something that promotes stress corrosion cracking and chloride pitting. Spray balls, don't rely on the fact that your spray balls always are spinning and are always clear and free. I've looked in so many tanks over the years where half a side was clean and the other half was not clean. Why? It was a whirly bird on top that got stuck. Now it was only covering half the tank, and the other half was not coming clean. As you can see here, a lot of debris sometimes, don't ask me how, gets into these spray balls. It plugs the relatively small spray nozzle pores, and you get almost zero coverage from those spray balls. This is the only source for you to get liquid in the tank. Here you have a word line. Believe it or not, this is actually a word line in a brewery, or was a word line in a brewery that's now defunct for good reasons. We saw this on the outside when we opened up the tri-clamp, and we're like, whoa, this is not good. So we took this valve out, and without going into much details, this is what the butterfly valve on the inside the gasket actually looked like. And this wasn't the only one. So maintenance is also a big factor in your brewery. There's an old saying: if you don't schedule maintenance for your brewery, it will schedule the maintenance for you, and it's usually at the most inconvenient point in time. Put these things on a schedule. These are wear and tear parts. You need to replace these eventually, especially when they're operated quite frequently. They will wear out. They will fray out, and they will start contaminating your system. This is where soil harbors. And if you take an ATP, sometimes we find maybe like 2,000-3,000 on the pipe, but then we find 150,000 light units on the gasket and behind the gasket. So this is major. Like less than 1,000 is considered clean. That's just laziness. This should never happen. But again, I've seen this, and not only once. You got to remove the false bottoms. You got to clean underneath there. If you don't do it, it's not good. Mechanical energy, halogen pitting. This is another one that I see in a lot of tanks. Chlorides are detrimental to stainless steel, and given the wrong circumstances, the wrong pH, the wrong temperature, the high enough amount of chlorides, it will attack your stainless steel. It will leave permanent damage, and it will cause problems in your tanks and in your equipment. This is an example from a 1,000-barrel tank, brand new tank, first time used. The brewery was using iodophor as their primary sanitizer. They had a problem with their dosing system. It put a huge slug of iodine in the tank and ruined the brand new tank in one single CRP cycle. It takes only one cycle to wreck your tank. This is the result afterwards. 1,000-barrel brand new tank. Fluid mechanics, I think, is the one thing that I see is the most misunderstood part of the operational parameters, and also the one that causes the most problems. So I'm going to go on a limb here and say in 90+% of all cases where we are called to a brewery and saying, I can't get this clean no matter what I do, we find that there are underlying fluid mechanical problems. Let's take a look at this a little deeper here. So when you see pipes and this is actually the outlet from a tank here going into the pipe fence. This is actually the outlet from a bottom cone of a tank, and you see this much deposits on it. Even after cleaning, I'm gonna tell you that there's a 99.99% chance that this is a fluid mechanical problem. And here it is very important to understand the difference between flow velocity, laminar flow, and turbulent flow. You need to have turbulent flow on your equipment to remove soil. Okay, it is very important to understand that chemicals prepare soil for removal, but the chemicals do not remove the soil. That is done by mechanical action In your case, in the brewery, that is your water. Your water circulating through the system, and it needs to circulate at a certain speed, which causes friction at the surfaces, and this friction in turn causes the water to become turbulent, and this turbulence is your mechanical energy that then actually removes the soil. So if you're using your wort pump, which is designed for gentle moving of wort, you don't want to get shear in your wort, and try to do a CIP cycle with that at the same flow rate, you're probably not going to get great results. On the other hand, CIP pumps are designed to really rip through the system, get you a high flow velocity, which then in turn produces turbulent flow. So very important to understand this. How can I tell easily if I have a fluid mechanical problem? So you see this little smudge mark here. When you just cleaned your equipment and immediately afterwards you can go into your equipment, and I think I have another one here, and you can just wipe the soil right off. Chemicals have done the job, okay? What you're looking at here is a fluid mechanical problem. For some reason, the soil that has been prepared for removal has not been removed. And most likely that's because in this case, this is the bottom of a larger tank. Probably the water has pooled here and has not flown here at a very rapid speed. And as a result has caused these deposits to just remain behind, okay? And if we really start looking around, okay, we find often cracked valves, okay? So if you have a CIP system, you're trying to balance the flow, right? What goes in must come out, and you try to have this the same, otherwise your holding tank is either going to fill up or it's going to completely drain of liquid. So you're trying to balance that. And unfortunately, what happens a lot of times, the bottom outlet is a product pipe, which can be up to 2-3 inches in diameter, but the inlet is only a single spray ball. So usually, or very often, you get a disproportional flow on the supply side and the return side. So in this particular case here, what happened is that the brewery decided, well, we're going to balance the tank by just cracking the return flow and limiting the flow going back into the tank, and that way we balance the system. Well, what does that do though? It slows down the return flow on the return side through all the pipes that are actually process pipes, whereas the supply side is not a process pipe. And the result was all this deposit that was being left behind because there was no turbulent flow. Okay, you can reverse this. Okay, big brewery in California, a very well-known place. We walked in there, I look in the tank, and I'd say, "Whoa, you got problems here." And the guy, "What are you saying? This tank is clean." I say, "You've never seen a clean tank." So we start looking at this, and the guy explained to me that, well, we have to correct the supply pipe because our return pump cannot keep up, in this case, with the supply out of the spray ball. So I said, well, let's try something. We put 2 pumps side by side, which doubled our return. We open up the supply valve on the spray ball on the supply side, and in one CIP cycle, the tank was clean. Okay, so it is fluid dynamics and the amount of flow and the amount of film that runs down the sides of your tanks is critical to successful cleaning. And literally cracking that valve from halfway cracked to open brought us from this to this in one single CIP cycle. Okay, this is literally one CIP cycle, and the only thing that we changed is open that valve. Chemicals, a quick word on chemicals. This is a short talk here, so I could talk about this all week long, and there's we can get into the fluid dynamics and how to get turbulent flow and what we need to look out for. So maybe I can hit Andrew up and we can schedule another maybe longer session where we talk a little bit more in depth about the fluid mechanics. But today I'm just trying to point out what the problems could be. On the chemical side, what we have here is similar conditions where, in this case, for example, the previous brewer obviously was not very diligent about cleaning his tanks, and he was also using a PBW type product, and he didn't rinse it properly. So the problem with these metasilicate-based products is that if you don't rinse them properly, it is a metasilicate, which is essentially a liquid glass. It will deposit itself into the tank and then becomes very, very difficult to rinse out. So what we did here, is essentially we used a certain chemical that gets all the stuff out, and we went from one CIP cycle, this is one CIP cycle again from this, which has been the case for many, many months. The brewer is no longer there. A home brewer came in there and he called me and said, Dirk, can you help me? You were recommended to me. I got all these tanks and I don't know what to do. I told him, okay, I think we can get this clean. One CIP cycle, we went to this one here. Okay, so kind of as a summary here, understanding the principles of fluid dynamics and mechanics, the effects of temperature on equipment and the cleaning process, how your choice of chemicals and their composition may affect your results and your equipment, that you have to operate within the performance envelope of your equipment and process. Okay, best example here is do not start swapping out spray balls from different tanks. Okay, each spray ball is designed to perform in a certain diameter tank, a certain volume tank. If you start moving these into larger tanks, or for that regard, even smaller tanks, or start to pump too much liquid into the spray ball or not enough liquid into the spray ball, it will cause problems with the performance of that particular spray ball. Okay, validate. Do not believe what's going on is actually going on. Look, make sure that it's actually happening. Perform at least an annual audit or have your chemical supplier come in and do it for you. Okay, if you are a larger brewery, I mean, pretty much we do it for our larger customers, for my smaller customers as well. If they ask me to establish and follow SOPs for your processes. Okay, and when I say establish, you also got to follow your SOPs. And people get very creative in the way they clean, and we see it so many times where we see from one shift to another shift. The one shift, the tanks have no problems. The other shift, we see a bunch of problems. Well, why is that? Well, one shift is following the SOPs and the other shift has their completely own different set of SOPs that makes it a lot easier and more convenient, but stuff doesn't get clean. Equally important is, don't let your SOPs become a status quo. You need to frequently reevaluate your SOPs, your cleaning procedures, your equipment, and make changes as necessary. Okay, don't just be complacent and say, I did this once, I'm good now. The brewery grows, the brewery changes, you make different styles of beer, your raw materials change. Okay, we've seen huge differences from one malt crop year to the next malt crop year, where suddenly protein is very high. And you see this in your brewery formulas. But keep in mind, this will also affect your soil load in your equipment. So you definitely want to do something, about that, and keep that in mind when you evaluate everything. And that was pretty much it for today here. I see I have one little comment here. What are the main basic principles for cleaning that every brewery should know by heart? Well, hopefully, Carlos, I've answered your question. It really is to understand, the 4 operational parameters that are present, and know how to work these within your performance envelope. Okay, and the reason why I'm always saying be careful when you ask other breweries what works for one brewery does not necessarily have to work for you. Okay, could be a different water condition, it could be a different water hardness, different styles of beer. Okay, you may be making non-alcoholic beers that requires a completely different approach, much more thorough than when you make regular beer that doesn't grow pathogens. Now, in my opinion, there's only one clean, and that is 100% clean, 0 counts every single time. That is the only acceptable clean in my book. But unfortunately, we see that's not the case, and I don't think it is necessarily. Sometimes it is negligence, definitely, but I think in more often than not, it is really just simply not knowing enough about fluid mechanics and how they interact within your system. And I hate to say it, in many times, not even the chemical suppliers out there really are sufficiently trained to really help you. I mean, there are chemical companies out there saying when you passivate, don't rinse afterwards. That is just negligence, because it will potentially pit your equipment. it is just not good. So long-term chemical contact is never good on chemicals. Everything should be rinsed. By the way, that includes your sanitizers, but that's a whole different presentation right there. If you have any questions, my contact information is here. Go on our website, sekachemicals.com. Email me at loeffler@sekachemicals.com. Be happy to help you out. Be happy to talk to you. Answer your questions, and kind of go from there. So if there are any comments or questions, we got a few more minutes here. Shoot ahead. I must have done too good of a job. What I can quickly throw in there, since we have a couple of minutes, passivation is a big one for your equipment. As a general rule, your hot liquor tank should be passivated about every 3 months, honestly. The rest of your equipment, about once every 12 to 16 months. Depends on how you're using it, how much acid you're running into it. Also keep in mind, and I've seen this repeatedly, and I still see this, even when there is equipment in use for many, many years, that we have polishing dust in the tanks that actually prevents a passivation from taking hold. So, do yourself a favor, especially when you have new equipment. After cleaning it, take a white cloth, go in your tank, do a good wipe on the inside. If you see a grayish dust on that cloth, you most likely have polishing dust. That happens when you when you grind and polish the stainless steel. It embeds itself onto and into the stainless, and it creates this like tenacious bond that doesn't come off unless you actually break it chemically. So if you guys have encountered this, let me know. Again, I'll try to do more presentations with Andrew. You also find me on other platforms. If you got questions, again, I can talk about this all week because it is so comprehensive of a subject, but I just want to throw this out there. Passivation is your friend. It can prevent or inhibit chloride pitting. It makes it easier for you to clean your tanks, saves your money, protects your stainless steel from being damaged. Stainless steel is stainless. It is not stainless. It can definitely rust. It can pit. It is not indestructible. So that little passivation layer is your friend, and you definitely want to try to have it on there. Otherwise, enjoy the CVP. It's a great platform. I was last year in CVP San Diego, the live show. Was an awesome event. Definitely recommend it to everyone. If you guys get a chance to get out there on one of those live events, definitely join Andrew and his team. They're doing an awesome job and really trying to promote a lot of good information in the industry here. So big shout out to Andrew for that one. Well, still alive, so I guess I could have talked more, but yeah. Again, if you have any questions regarding any of the subjects I touched on, definitely feel free to email me. Happy to help. Share my knowledge with you, if I can help. And always in the interest of promoting quality in the industry, which I think is very important. I think education is something that we definitely need to promote, have more of, and have people share their knowledge with other people, that we spread the love. And Carlos, thanks for your question. Eric, always good seeing you. Since the next speaker was supposed to be on, I guess they're having some technical problems. So unfortunately, I'm really bad at jokes. So